Hi, today I'm going to be doing a HDMI mod on my Wii. This is a clear case mod and a HDMI conversion from my original Wii. Here's the finished article. I think you'd agree it looks really cool, absolutely fantastic. It's done by a company called Electron Shepherd. If you want to get involved in this mod, you need to nip over to his website. This is the website where you can purchase the HDMI conversion kit. Once you've got that, obviously you're going to need to dig out your original Wii or get yourself a donor Wii. I bought this one off eBay for £20, so they're pretty cheap now. They're not very expensive. You pay what you want based on the accessories you've got with it. Okay, you need to get your Wii stripped down to a motherboard level. This is quite a difficult mod, and this is the area you're going to be working on the board. And obviously we need to be soldering to vias, so it's going to get quite involved. You're going to need either a really good magnifying glass or some form of microscope to allow you to see these vias, because they are very small. This is obviously quite zoomed in. So once you've got down to a motherboard level and identify which vias you're going to need to connect to, we need to just scrape off some of the solder mask that's on the vias to allow us to tin the vias ready for the flex cable that comes with the HDMI mod. Now this mod, you need to be very careful, need to be very gentle, and just gently scrape away the solder mask that's on top of the vias to allow us to put a little bit of solder on there. So it's a slow process, just clean scrape until you start to see that copper come through. We don't want to take too much off, and we don't want to damage any of the traces around it. So plenty of flux when you think you're ready to try to put some solder on. Then just get a little ball of solder on the end of your soldering iron and gradually work your way, roll that around all over these vias with plenty of flux. And eventually those vias will take, and you'll start to fill the vias, as you can see. Again, flux is your friend, so you need to be putting plenty of flux on to allow that to soak in and allow the solder to stick nicely to those vias. This took me about 10 minutes. It's this is probably the hardest part of the mod, purely and simply because of the size of this. Obviously I'm zoomed well in, so it looks okay, but believe me, these vias are absolutely tiny, so you've got to be very careful and then just gently roll your soldering iron until you're happy that you've got a nice level of contact, and there's a nice enough dome of solder that's going to obviously give you plenty of solder to soak through into your HDMI via connection, the flex cable connection. So I'm pretty happy with that now. So we're going to offer up the flex cable, and as you can see, the flex cable's got little holes in it. So when we melt the solder, when I'm happy with it being in place, when we melt the solder will come through that hole and solder the top via to the bottom via. Start with one, just get one that you feel is in the right place. And you'll see when you press the flex cable, the flux will make the flex cable go almost clear, so you can see through the underside. So it makes that really nice and easy to be able to line up the two vias together. Obviously I've tinned one there that gives you a little bit of room to rotate and just get everything happily in place. A couple of presses there just to make sure you've got good contact. Then just find yourself another via and then just give that a tack in as well. And then one more at the other end, just so it holds it all in place. What then I did was I got myself some tweezers and then basically held the flex cable down while I gently soldered each via individually, just making sure I've got really good contact. Leave the heat on, you're not going to damage this flex, they're really robust really. So just go one at a time, very gently. Give it a good heat soak just so you get some good penetration through to the two vias, and the end of the tweezers just hold it all together just so that you've got no separation between the two layers and everything is in as close contact as you possibly can. Well, I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm really pleased with that, to be in fact. So I think that's done now. Give that a bit of a clean up with some IPA. Next thing is we're going to be connecting to these points. We've got a 3.3 volts, a 5 volts and a ground. They're going to differ depending on what motherboard you've got, but on Electron's Shepherd's website it gives you all the instructions for the different motherboards that are all available. I'm just going to tin up these contact pads. I'm using the wrong nozzle here, really, the wrong end. Purely and simply it's just not transferring heat really quick enough, but I'm just a bit concerned. I didn't want to put too much heat onto this, so I'm just going with a small tip. just pre-tinning everything up there, ready for these wires. So the hardest part of the installation is pretty much done now. This is all downhill. There's a few more connections to make wire-wise, like you say, power earths, that's all okay. They're all nice big test points that you're going to connect to, so it's really nice and easy. There's nothing else to worry about really with regard to connection. So it's just a matter of identifying which wires are correct for your Wii and then connecting some wires in. I wouldn't go with anything too big. It does recommend what size wire they do, 28 gauge, 26 gauge, something like that. I just put whatever I'd got lying around, so there was nothing. Unfortunately, nothing came with a kit, which I think would be a nice touch, just to come with everything pre-cut. But I understand that's fair enough. I just used some scrap wire that I'd got laying around. Just making this all nice and tidy, just I've got no cross connections or anything like that. This is a picture off the website, just shows you the connections in place. Those two red arrows identify the next two connections we're going to make to this little IR board. Now this is an optional, you don't have to do this. It's if you want to select the menu through a GameCube controller, that's absolutely fine, because one of the connections you make is to the GameCube controller port, so that if you want to enter the menu for the HDMI conversion, you can do it using the control pad, a GameCube control pad. If you don't want to do that and you want a slightly easier way, I suppose, or if you're not intending to use this for Game Boy, you can buy a remote that allows you to access the menu straight from there. What I'm soldering in now is the actual HDMI port. This is nice and easy. The only thing you've got to worry about is making sure that it's square to the motherboard, making sure it's all parallel to the motherboard. You don't want it coming out at a goofy angle. That's the IR board with the wires going back to the HDMI conversion, so just a couple of wires go from that. I don't intend on using a remote, but I wouldn't say, I'm not going to say that I won't use it in the future. This is the flex cable that joins the two components together. You need to make sure that the blue side is facing down and the connections are facing upwards. This one is a little bit fiddly because the HDMI board is moving around and I was just very conscious of damaging those vias, so be very careful here to support the board. I use like a pinching action. Just want to support it well, just so that you don't get any force on those vias. Once we've done that, we're going to make a fold in the ribbon cable. What I found was best was to use the chip that's on the board there with Samsung written on it. What I found was best was to fold the cable parallel to that chip on the top edge of that chip. Put the first fold in there. Then take the other end and fit that into the HDMI connection board. Again with the blue facing downwards and the connection upwards. This one's obviously slightly easier because the board is soldered in, so you've got something to push against. You're not going to worry about breaking any vias or anything. So that's connected. So with all that connected in your first crease, then just basically neatly follow on from that and create another crease at a right angle to the rest of it. Now if you're putting the original case back on, the original white case, you could probably put a bit of Captain Tape. But because I'm going with this clear case, I left it floating around because the case obviously holds the ribbon cable in. Once I've got this out of the box, I left all the outer plastic on. I think it's pretty much a fingerprint magnet, as you could probably well imagine. You need to do a few modifications to this because this case is originally intended for a normal Wii. So there are a couple of little modifications you need to make. This needs to be lowered a little bit. I found this was catching my motherboard, and obviously a little cutout there for the HDMI output needs to be made on both sides of the case there to allow the board to fit in there nicely. So this is the lower half, all okay. HDMI, it's all fitting nicely. The board is against the plastic, which is great. now going to be popping on the first tin shield. I didn't fit the rear tin shield. I wanted to be able to see the HDMI conversion, so I decided to leave that off. You can fit that if you wanted to. I just like the idea of being able to see the mod. Be very careful here trying to get your wires through this. It's very sharp, as you'll probably work out, so be very careful bringing those wires through the first tin shield. And also your Wi-Fi boards, be very careful that you don't get any of those trapped. The sharpness of these tins, you can soon cut through or ground one of the wires, so just be very vigilant in making sure everything's nice and neat and it's all nicely flattened down and ready to accept the screws. Okay, so while you're putting this back together, remember that the arrows are silver screws and the crosses are black screws, just so you don't put the wrong screws. Obviously they're different lengths, so I don't want you to damage your case by putting the wrong screw in the wrong hole, so just bear that in mind when you're putting it back together. It's a nice little touch that they've done. Obviously it aids you not making any mistakes when it comes to putting it back together. So we'll quickly pop all these screws back in, get the motherboard nicely secured. The Wii's been a machine that I've looked at many times for wanting to get back into it, and I have bought other HDMI output converters that are external to the Wii. This is the first internal mod that I've ever seen or wanted to do as well. So I'm really pleased that Electron Shepherd has done this, and everything's really nice and compact. Yes, it's not for everybody. It is a slightly difficult mod, but there are people around in the community that will fit these units for you. It's not impossible, you know, they are quite easy to do really if you've got the right equipment and a little bit of soldering experience. I wouldn't class myself as it being anything fantastic. So here's the motherboard all bolted down. There are different versions of Wii, so it's difficult for me to explain every single version. They come with different tin plates, stuff like that. Just take pictures or videos when you're taking yours apart, just so you know where everything goes and, you know, and goes back together, if you know what I mean. Next thing is to get the disk drive plugged back in. This proved a little bit fiddly just because the flex cable was bent. That folds back over and screws back into place. Recommend keeping your screws all nice and separate, just so that you know you bunch them together, so you know different zones take different amounts of screws, so you don't just have one big pile. If you can identify, you know, there are magnetic plates and things you can put screws on nowadays. This is the front cover. Just stripping this down, obviously fitting the clear case front. One thing that I've probably done different is I wanted the felt bit off the front cover. I thought obviously that keeps the dust out of the machine, so I wanted to swap that over. This probably posed the most fiddly. I think this was even more fiddly than soldering the vias. This was particularly fiddly and wouldn't come apart and wouldn't stay together. And I was trying to. It took many trial and error trying to get this back together. It was very fiddly, and I had to walk away quite a few times before it disappeared over my shoulder, but I managed to get it all done in the end. Last thing before we put the top case on is this further shield that goes over the top of the drive. We're just getting that ready to pop back on, just seeing what orientation it went on. It'd been a few days since I'd actually stripped this down, so sometimes it's just refreshing your memory. And you'll see that just clips in there quite nicely. It needs to be in place properly, because you don't get to screw a lot of this in until the outer case is on, because they go through this. So just making sure that it's all seated nicely and all the screw holes are all nicely aligned. I'm pleased with that. Then we can move on to fitting the outer shell. We can get to a point where this mod has been finished, and so we can get to trying it. Well, there we go, that's it all back together. I do love a nice clear case. I think it's well worth putting that fibre, that cloth thing behind there as well, and the LEDs, and that all works really good. Leaving that bottom case on, exposing the actual conversion, I think is really good. So I'm really pleased with it. It's testing it time. So I hacked this Wii. I did find out that the SD card didn't work, which made hacking it a little bit difficult. I changed all the themes and done all the normal things. You've got your normal homebrew channel, your Nintendo, so we can play the GameCube games, and USB loader so we can load all our games from USB. The Wii is really easy to hack, even if, like in this instance, my SD card didn't work in this actual Wii. There are ways around it. You can hack it with just a USB drive. Or your computer. There's many ways now to be able to hack your Wii. It's very simple and nice, easy to simple guide to actually doing this. A nice carousel menu with all the games listed on the hard drive. Again, the scene is really mature now, and it's really nice and easy to be able to hack a Wii and get everything running. So this is the output from the HDMI conversion. As you can appreciate, it's nice and crisp. Really nice and colourful. I'm really pleased with the output on it. I've got no complaints. It's convenient, I suppose, is the foremost thing why I did this. It's convenient just to be able to plug HDMI cable into the back of this and play. I know there are other HDMI conversions. I am going to show you, a little bit of footage from my other Wii, which does run a HDMI to Wii conversion board. Yeah, it's a decent enough output. You could argue why you do it, but there's a lot more features with this mod. I think if you want a little bit more out of it, and you can change things, the on-screen displays and all the other stuff. I think and the GameCube compatibility that allows you to work the menu and all that sort of stuff. I'm really pleased with the way it's panned out. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I really enjoyed doing this mod. I think it brought my Wii back to life and made it far more nicer and easy to play with. No external things messing around with that I could knock off, and this brings much more features to the table than obviously anything else. So it's really great that the community are doing this for the Wii, and I think all of the hacking and all the stuff that's been done with enabling us to play all these games straight off a hard drive is absolutely fantastic. So if you made it this far, again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video. Bye for now.